Welcome back to The Big Show, where we talk to the big stars, and I'm really lucky because I get to talk to some of my favourite people, and one of my favourites is Fiona Phillips. How are you?
Well, you slimy old thing, honestly.
Slimy? That doesn't make me...
Do you say that to everyone?
No, I'm really lucky, though, because I turn so many away.
Oh, do you? Well, I'm lucky then.
Well, were you like that when you were on GMTV, that some people would just turn up in front of you and you wanted to hang yourself from a large piece of rope?
Yes, but I'm not going to name any names, especially the ones who actually don't want to talk about what they're on to talk about, and then you do think, hang on, we're doing you a favour here. You're either plugging your programme or something and you don't want to say anything.
I had one of those recently with Dom Jolly from Trigger Happy. I couldn't make the man smile. I thought, hang on, aren't you meant to be a comedian? No, wouldn't play along.
Oh, that's horrible, isn't it?
But you see, I've got the great thing where I can just press the next button, play a record and move on. You on GMTV had to sit there and grim and bear it, didn't you?
Squirm. I don't know if you ever saw the David Blaine one, did you?
Yes, I did.
Oh my God, which Eamonn, because usually Eamonn said that I used to sit there interrupting all his interviews, as if I ever would, Alex. And when David Blaine was on, I just thought, oh, you can do this on your own, because he was so awful. And after Eamonn said, for God's sake, he said, usually you can't keep your mouth shut, and then just when I need you, you're not there.
I love that Eamonn Holmes, and he tells a great story as to why he left GMTV. Apparently one day he'd done an interview at 8 o'clock, a very serious interview where somebody had died through gambling, the pressure of it, the money, the credit cards, this and that. And he did 8 minutes of this woman crying in front of him, and then he turned to the auto cue and said, anyway, if you want to win £10,000, you can call us now. And it was just so unbalanced, he couldn't cope with it anymore. Of course, you made the same choice to walk away opposed to being fired, which was a good one, really, wasn't it?
Well, in retrospect, how little did I know what was going to happen about a year and a half down the line. I mean, a lot of my friends, you know, they talked about as names in the papers, but these are people with families, mortgages, bills, you know, the same as everyone else. And clearly, obviously, they're paid a good salary, but then they've lost that salary as well. They've got mortgages that live up to that salary, and they've lost that now. So, yeah, there's a very odd feeling there at the moment, by all accounts. People are losing their livelihood. So, you know, I really wish Christine and Adrian all the very best, and the team that are there with them. A lot of my old producer friends are still working with them, so I wish them all the very best. I hope it's successful. I think, you know, it's the end of an era, but the beginning of a new one, hopefully.
May I be honest with you?
Yes.
I don't know whether I can stomach Adrian Charles' face at 6 o'clock in the morning. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, but do you know what? I saw him, can't remember what match it was now, actually. I think it was the England game against Hungary, and I don't know whether he dressed himself or a stylist had got hold of him, but I thought he looked lovely because he had a white shirt on, a dark tie and a dark jacket, and it really, really suited him. So I hope he's in good hands at Daybreak. And then he said GMTV then.
No, don't say those words around ITV. You'll never be allowed in again. It's interesting because I love GMTV, partly because I could look at you and then look at Penny Smith, which is no bad thing, is it?
Yeah, Penny's lovely. Yeah, she's doing all right too, so that's good.
How does it feel when you turn up one day and say, I'm off, I'm gone, and then the next minute your husband, who also works in the same place, is gone, and neither of you got an income? That must be tough.
Yeah, but fortunately that hasn't happened. You know, I'm touching wood here. I mean, I've got a couple of bread and butter jobs. I write for the Mirror, and I've got a couple. write a column for a supermarket magazine, and so I've got some bread and butter things which I knew were there. I mean, I couldn't rashly just say, right, I'm giving everything up and the mortgage can pay itself, because it doesn't. But yeah, Martin's job loss was a bit more of a shock, really. I guess when ITV came in, we knew something was going to happen and a lot of people were going to lose their jobs. But it was, it was quite instant. And he was actually on the way to my little son's nativity play, and he phoned me up and said, I've got to go back into the office. And that was it, really. It was, not last Christmas. Yeah, it was last Christmas, actually, yeah. Last Christmas, 8 months ago. But yeah, he's doing freelance work, and but you know, it's difficult when you've been in a really high pressured, high profile job. And as he said, you used to have about 70 odd people in there with problems every day, and your mind's constantly buzzing. It's difficult to step down from that. So
we're going to get into the reasons that you walked in a bit, which are heartbreaking to say the least. I just want to cover a few things about you first, and your presentation style, because I know some people have had a bit of a go, but I love it. You never seem to take it too seriously, which is what we love as just a viewer. Journalists like to take news very seriously. You kind of came of it from our angle, that we kind kind of know nothing and learn together.
But that's what I don't like presenters who sit there thinking it's me, 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 me. It's not. It's about the audience. And when I sat there, and I don't mean to sound holier than thou, I thought about the audience, not about me. I mean, if you saw the state of me some mornings, you'll know that I didn't. But and it's not a style. That's just who I am. And I wasn't going to suddenly... I think the mistake that people make with people is to put them there and then try and mould them to what they want to be. I mean, if they do that with Christian and Adrian, say, we want you to do this, that's a big mistake. They should let those two be who they want to be, because it's hard being natural on television, actually. That's probably the hardest bit. And if you can do that, that's half the battle won, I think. And if people don't like you, well, then they don't have to watch.
And again, you've had some amazing scoops over the years. The Heather Mills thing was a really fascinating bit of TV.
Gosh,
do you kind of hope those things happen, or would you rather avoid them?
No, I do. Well, clearly, as a journalist, I'm not saying it's great when they happen, because poor Heather was breaking down, actually, and I really felt for her as a human being, not as the subject of a story. So I really felt for her, actually. In fact, I was very choked up by the end of it and went off the sofa to take her out because she was in bits. And as she said at the time, I'm being treated worse than a paedophile or a murderer, and all I did was marry Paul McCartney. And she really was in bits. And, if you saw the stories that were... I mean, I think the story that tipped her over the edge was some ridiculous thing about her fireworks killing someone's dog, and she just said that was the end of it. It's the most stupid story, but she said that was the end of it, and she just felt she had to say something. And she did, and she didn't stop, actually, when she came on. But I really felt for her.
You've got that human touch, which is what everybody loved. You've also got an incredible sense of humour, which also gets you into bother. Can I talk to you about that feeling of when you go along the supermarket aisle and you see your face on the front of this paper, that paper and the other paper? Is that the worst feeling in the world, especially when it's beyond your control?
Well, it's not nice when you see stories about yourself that aren't true or have been, considerably embellished, or someone's given them something because they've got something against you. And, whenever I've done a job, it's a job to me. What's more important to me is my family and all the things that are most important to everyone else. It's a job. Just because I happen to do it behind a microphone or in front of a camera doesn't mean I'm any more special than anyone else. I'm really, really not. And I really still connect with the people where I came from, who didn't have much money, who went to a failing state school, and they're the people I really care about. And broadcasting, they really are. And people who, I see it as, this sounds very righteous, actually, but I see it as a public service, actually. It's not about me being me, and it's about giving the information that people want to hear.
Your new book's called Before I Forget. We're going to get to that next. Recently, did I see you on that 3 o'clock show thing?
Yes, you did. 3
Wasn't that the most awful car crash in the history of television?
It was quite... when we went on there, Gloria Hunniford and I, who've done quite a bit of television between us, said this is the least prepared and that we've ever felt. And it actually got quite good ratings. I mean, if nothing else, I guess it made people look.
It was curious because it all seemed to be, you didn't know who was meant to talk here and who was talking there, and what your opinion was meant to be, and all of that stuff, and that's always uncomfortable, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it was a pilot series. It was, it was never a fully honed. It was a let's try this out, and it really was that. It really was. It was not. Of course, it was thought out a bit, but it wasn't finally honed. It wasn't. They were trying people out. They were, they were seeing how it went down, how it might shape up eventually. So it was a pilot. So, yeah, it was a bit scraggy around the edges. But
where I do love you is occasionally on Loose Women. I see you on there. And that's nice, isn't it? Because you can actually sit down and relax. You're not trying to be all newsy and important like the 3 o'clock show was trying to be in Places. That's just a gossip for the girls. It's lovely going on there. And that, those, you feel as though you know them even if you don't actually when you go in there. So it's nice to do. So, it's nice to do occasionally. I wouldn't want to do it all the time. We've done the tittle-tattle. I now want to get into matters far more serious, and really the backbone of your book, Before I Forget, is not a title that you chose lightly, I presume. The reason you left GMTV was to take care of your parents, and I know that Alzheimer's has been a huge part of your life recently. Take us back when you first realised there was a problem with your mum and dad, because for both of them to get it must just be totally tragic.
Yeah, well, the awful thing with it is, and especially when my mum was suffering at first, actually, it was going back over 11 years now, and back then Alzheimer's wasn't talked about that much at all. It really wasn't. And if it was, people used to say, well, that's just senile dementia, isn't it? That's when people get old and say stupid things and forget. And actually it's not that, because my mum was in her late 50s. Now, when we look back, there's so much looking back and thinking, oh gosh, that's why she was like that. That's why she did that. But I think when I first started to notice, she used to come and stay with me all the time, Mum, and we used to lie in bed talking, and I was very close to her, and, you know, she was a great friend to me. Clearly she's my mum, but she was also, you know, we were very, very close, and she'd get on a coach and come wherever I was, grotty old bedsit, you know, as I progressed on people, friends' floors, she'd come and stay anywhere with me. And it was, I guess, I noticed things before 1999, which is when I had my first son, Nat. She was behaving differently, but I just thought, oh, Mum, you know, you do think that when it's your mum. You think, well, Mum's doing this now. What's she playing at? But I remember when I had my first son, Nat, the child that my mum had been begging me to have for years. She used to go around saying it to everyone, well, of course, Fiona's a career girl, making an excuse for me not having any children. And then I had my son, Nat, and of course I phoned Mum and Dad up, and I said, Mum, I've had a boy. And she said, oh, never mind. And my heart just broke, and I couldn't fathom. I thought, is she jealous now I finally had a child? Is she feeling her nose pushed out? I thought of all sorts of reasons why it may have been. And, you know, I got loads of cards and flowers from people I didn't even know, and nothing came from my parents.
How do you deal with that? Because, of course, we learn from them. We don't teach them, do we? And then there comes a point where you have to become mum.
Yes.
How difficult was that transition?
Well, this is the thing. And as I say, it was terribly bad timing, because I was just starting my own family. I was doing, you know, a high-pressure job, getting up in the middle of the night. And, and then Mum ended up becoming like a child herself. And I remember she eventually did come and help me. You know, this traditional mum thing, I'm going to come down and help me with the baby. And that I really noticed even more then. She couldn't even do the taps to fill the washing up basin up. She couldn't do the toaster. She kept coming into our bed at night. She was having night terrors. She was in a state, but we thought it was clinical depression. We thought, oh, her and Dad aren't getting on very well at the moment. You know, you put it down to all sorts of different things because you simply don't know. And unbeknownst to me, she'd been going to the GP for a long, long time, desperate to find out what was wrong with her. But no one had told us, because she'd forgotten she'd been to the doctor by the time she got out of the doctor's surgery. So she hadn't told me. My dad didn't tell me because he didn't know what she was doing. So, you know, that, and if you live away from your parents and the other part of the marriage isn't, you know, their marriage, they'd been married for a long time, their marriage wasn't so good towards the end, and they were very much, you know, my dad just let her get on with her own life, he got on with his, and I don't think they really knew what was going on in her life, apart from that fact that he was getting terribly frustrated with her behaviour, and he thought it was just part of their marriage, you know, dissembling, but she was very, very ill.
Forgive me for not reading the entire book. I only got it very recently, and I've read parts of it. I don't know whether it kind of reads very well in terms of the NHS and spotting illnesses. I think more could have been done had it been caught earlier. Do you feel that, or have I misinterpreted it?
I think more could have been done. Clearly it's not curable, but more could have... my mother's life could have been made easier if, when my mum had gone into the GP presenting with the problems that she had, that he had then phoned me or my father or someone related to my mother, because if someone is going in on their own saying, I'm forgetting things, I can't remember my friends' names, I can't remember where things are in my kitchen, I've set fire to my mum set fire to the kitchen because she forgot she'd put vegetables on, and, you know, all sorts of things, then the thing is that patient confidentiality should be thrown out of the window in those circumstances, and he should have got on the phone to me.
It's really weird because, as you say, that whole thing gets in the way of actually saving someone's life to a point. I mean, if you were fully aware of how serious it was, you'd have done more, A, to fight for her, and B, to get her some form of help.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the end, I mean, I was trying to juggle so many things, and Mum was the huge part of that. And yet I had two tiny little children who needed me as well, plus my poor husband. It's a wonder he's still around. And plus a very demanding job, which I couldn't just say, look, my whole family's falling apart here. Please let me have 3 months off or something. You can't do that. Not with that kind of job anyway. And I couldn't just give up my job then, because my children had to have a roof over their heads. So my father, as you know, also, about a year after my mum had died, we were told that Dad had Alzheimer's. We couldn't believe it. I mean, I was too scared to tell people in case they thought I was attention-seeking or, some sort of bad joke. We couldn't believe it. But he is suffering it in a far better way than my mother is, if you understand what I mean. He doesn't realise he's got it. He's happy. He's funny. He's not getting on with his life because he can't do anything. But social services have been brilliant. Age Concern have been brilliant. They offer services if you pay for them, to get my dad's shopping done. He lives a lot nearer me. I've moved him, which was a big rigmarole, but my Uncle Barry helped with that. His experience is different to Mum's, and it has, I'm not so committed now since Mum's gone, and I don't have to get up at 4 a.m, which, when you're tired on top of juggling everything, it's almost impossible, really. I didn't have any time for myself. I wasn't living a life. I was just straddling it, really.
In a way, are you grieving your parents?
I felt quite angry that there isn't one big outpouring of grief, if you know what I mean, because all the while they're ill, you're grieving them, and it's like a huge lingering depression that goes on for years and years and years, because bit by bit they're going, and yet they're still there, and they require an awful amount of care and attention. So it's a really, really difficult illness for all these chronic illnesses they're very cruel. Multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, all the muscular dystrophy, all these motor neuron, all those cruel chronic diseases involve more than just the patient. They involve the whole family, especially Alzheimer's, because that person's brain is going. It's actually their mind. They can't do anything, in the end.
If you want to find out more about it, read Fiona Phillips' story, Before I Forget. It's out now. I don't want to sell it as too sexy, because actually there's a lot of heartache in it. It's not one of those whiffly-waffly, I'm going to bring out my second autobiography of the year books, is it?
I wouldn't have dreamt of doing that. I was offered, funnily enough, when I gave up GMTV, I was offered quite a few sort of autobiography type things, and I just wouldn't have the presumption to do that. But this clearly has got a bit of my life, parts of my life in it, but it's more related to family and not the whole career thing or anything, although my dear friend Eamonn's in it.
And he loves you very much. Should I call you Fiona or Fiona?
Well, Fiona's nice.
Fiona's nice. 50 next year, oh dear.
Oh dear, yes. Why do other people... I haven't given it any thought whatsoever. And yet the number of people that keep saying to me, it's the big 50 next year. That's just a number. I was brought up by a dad who said, bloody birthdays, why celebrate those? So I don't. No. Plus my birthday's on New Year's Day, so everyone's usually hungover on my birthday, so I've never celebrated it.
I went to see Lorraine Kelly in her broom cupboard a year or two back when she was celebrating hers, and she went skiing or something and did the antithesis of, putting flat shoes on and starting wearing sensible clothes. Are you going to change? Are you just going to carry on being you?
No, good grief, no. I just think you carry on until the end, don't you? Whenever the end may be. It's just another number. Clearly, you do feel different, but physically more than mentally. Mentally, I couldn't care less about it. Physically, I'm feeling it a bit more.
Fiona, before we go, we're all after ratings, and we're all after a bit of money from the papers here and there. What do I have to do to beg you to slag off Christine and say she's not as good as I am, she's not as attractive as I am, but something to...
she's far more attractive than I am. Plus, she's got Frank Lampard, but she's not as good as I am.
There we go. Brilliant. That's the quote we need. Thank you. We'll send that to the Sun for tomorrow to plug your new book. Before I Forget is the new... Before I Forget is the new book. Come on, we're all in the same business. We all need a bit of publicity. Fiona Phillips is my special guest, and thank you so much for talking. It's lovely seeing you, and will you come on again?
You're very good. Yes, I'd love to. Thank you.
I haven't done anything. I've sat here quiet, let you talk.
No, you're very good.
I love you very much, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.